Opening statements officially kick off former President Trump's so-called hush money trial in New York City. Trump's attorneys today insisting their client is innocent. This as prosecutors call their first witness to the stand.
This is a Biden witch hunt to keep me off the campaign trail. So far, it's not working because my poll numbers are higher than they've ever been because the public understands that it's a witch hunt.
And the first witness taking the stand today, former publisher of the National Enquirer, David Pecker. Prosecutors accusing him of buying up damaging stories about Trump during the 2016 presidential race to make sure they were not being published. Trump has pleaded not guilty to 34 counts of falsifying business records related to alleged payments to an adult film actress before the 2016 election. He has also denied any wrongdoing. The court took an early recess today so an alternate juror could make a dentist appointment. It is set to resume tomorrow with a hearing on whether Trump violated his gag order. After that, Pecker will be back on the stand. And to assess today's opening arguments in Trump's New York criminal trial, joining me now to assess this case is former federal prosecutor and director of the Meese Center and Simon Center at Heritage Foundation, John Malcolm. John Malcolm, thank you so much for joining.
My pleasure. Good to be with you.
John, the prosecution and defense attorneys in Trump's New York criminal alleged payoff case making opening arguments earlier today. Who do you think, from all the reports coming in, made the more convincing opening statements?
Well, really, until the evidence comes on, neither one of them is going to be particularly compelling one way or the other. I certainly think that Donald Trump's lawyer said that there's nothing wrong with trying to influence an election one way or the other. It's called democracy, and that there's nothing wrong with a wealthy man making a payment to somebody, either to spare embarrassment or to get rid of a nuisance lawsuit, and to enter into a non-disclosure agreement. That companies and wealthy individuals do that kind of thing all the time, and that the average person may not engage in that kind of conduct, but certainly businesses and wealthy folks do, and that there's nothing wrong with that. It's perfectly legal to do that. And certainly not evidence of any kind of a conspiracy to engage in a campaign finance violation or make a false business entry, that it's all par for the course in the Donald Trump world.
Former President Trump obviously not too happy that he's sitting in a courtroom. John, I want to get your reaction to the former president's remarks outside of that courthouse earlier today.
I just want to say before we begin, these are all Biden trials. This is done as election interference. Everybody knows it. I'm here instead of being able to be in Pennsylvania and Georgia and lots of other places campaigning. And it's very unfair. Fortunately, the poll numbers are very good. They've been going up because people understand what's going on. This is a witch hunt, and it's a shame. And it comes out of Washington. It's in coordination with Washington, everything, including the DA's office.
I want to get your reaction to former President Trump there saying this is coming out of Washington. What do you think he means by that?
Oh, well, I think he means that there's a two-tier system of justice, and that state and local authorities and the federal government through the Department of Justice are lining up against him in order to try anything they can to make sure that he is a convicted felon on Election Day, and also, as the former president said, to prevent him from being out on the campaign trail, where I'm sure he would very much like to be.
Trump is ultimately saying he's indicted over legal expense. Explain that to us. Is that oversimplified or is it clear cut? And will it ultimately come down to interpretation?
No, it's not overly simplified. I mean, so the charges here are false entries on a business record. In this case, the false entries are supposedly invoices from Michael Cohen, the former president's lawyer at the time, and then the payments for legal services rendered. And the allegation is that those were false statements, that these weren't for legal services rendered, these were for hush money payments. This is normally a misdemeanor at worst in the New York system. They'll usually get a civil fine, sometimes at most a misdemeanor offense. But here, Alvin Bragg has said that these payments and these entries were designed to cover up another crime, specifically federal campaign finance violations, and that's what makes these felonies. I have a hard time believing that. The Federal Election Commission, federal authorities usually enforce federal campaign finance violations, looked into all of this and said that they didn't see any violations there. But the New York District Attorney's Office has decided to take what is normally a bookkeeping case and to turn them into 34 felony counts. And so, Donald Trump said, look, my lawyer invoiced me, I paid him. So far as I was concerned, it was for legal services rendered. And he may very well be right about that. But ultimately, that's what Michael Cohen and others will be testifying about, and the jury will ultimately make up their own minds.
Was there a case to be made to sequester the jury, and why didn't the judge there, Juan Merchan, sequester them to protect the integrity of the case?
Well, this case is going to be going on for, it's estimated to be about 6 weeks, and that's a long time to sequester a jury. The jurors have all been said that they can be impartial. They've been told not to pay any attention to any stories or statements from friends and relatives. But I suppose if jurors start reporting back that they are starting to receive that kind of pressure, the judge may very well change his mind and decide to sequester the jury. That would be a great hardship on the people who are serving as jurors, but it could well happen.
John Malcolm of Heritage Foundation, really appreciate you joining. Thank you.
Good. My pleasure.
As anti-Israel protests continue at Columbia University, administrators are telling students to stay home and to take classes online today. The announcement coming as the Jewish holiday of Passover begins tonight. Here's New York Governor Kathy Hochul and an NYPD official addressing security concerns at the university.
Students are scared. They're afraid to walk on campus. They don't deserve that. They deserve to be in an environment that is free from discrimination as required by state human rights laws.
Any kind of violence is not going to be tolerated. Any kind of property damage is not going to be tolerated. Any sort of criminality is not going to be tolerated.
In a post on X, New York City Mayor Eric Adams said he's, quote, horrified and disgusted with the anti-Semitism being spewed at and around the Columbia University campus. Police say protests like these are popping up across college campuses nationwide, forcing schools to step up security. During a press conference this morning, NYPD executives say the student protests on the Columbia campus are fine as long as they're safe. Police were called last Thursday to quell an anti-Israel protester who set up a tent encampment in the middle of the campus. And is President Biden sending mixed messages? What he's saying about the pro-Palestinian protests on Columbia's campus as he tries to court younger voters in the upcoming election. NTD's Iris Tao has more from Biden's speech today in Triangle, Virginia.
And President Biden says he condemns anti-Semitic protests on college campuses, but that's not the only group he's condemning.
Do you condemn the anti-Semitic protests on college campuses?
I condemn the anti-Semitic protests. That's why I've set up a program to deal with that. I also condemn those who don't understand what's going on with the Palestinians.
The mixed messaging comes after he issued a statement on Sunday about Passover, in which he wrote, "This blatant anti-Semitism is reprehensible and dangerous and has absolutely no place on college campuses." Biden's latest comments come as he's marking Earth Day here in Virginia, announcing new funding for solar projects.
900,000 will have solar on the rooftops for the first time and soon.
And more of what he calls green job opportunities.
Brings out the best in young people to do what's best for America.
In a bid to court young voters, a key base for his re-election bid that's growing increasingly dissatisfied with his handling of the war in Gaza. Despite Biden's condemnation on anti-Semitism, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez calling the protests peaceful at the same event.
As we once again witness the leadership of those peaceful student-led protests on campuses like Columbia.
The White House, meanwhile, put out its own statement over the weekend, saying it condemns calls for violence and physical intimidation targeting Jewish students on Columbia's campus. Reporting from Triangle, Virginia, Iris Tao, NTD News.
The House Republican Conference divided over the future of its leadership as the Senate takes up a foreign aid bill that could see TikTok banned from app stores in the United States. Our Washington correspondent Luis Martinez has more.
The House of Representatives passed on Saturday a $95 billion supplemental foreign aid package for Israel, Taiwan, and Ukraine, despite having the majority of the Republican majority voting against sending 2/3 of those resources to Ukraine.
I'd like to start to express the words of gratitude for the Congress, for the House of Representatives, The words of gratitude to the American people, to the President Biden and his administrations.
Ukrainian officials expressed their gratitude towards the United States, while some Republican congressmen strongly opposed a foreign aid package that did not include any border security provisions.
I do not support Mike Johnson. He's already a lame duck. If we have the vote today in our conference, he would not be speaker today. He's already a lame duck.
Unfortunately, without border security, I can't go back to the people I represent and say, hey, we're doing nothing for you for the border, but here's now another $95 billion for foreign aid. I can't support that.
There's at least 3 congressmen who have voiced openly and publicly that they would support a motion to vacate the speakership. That's Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, the Republican from Georgia, who filed a motion to vacate the speakership over a month ago. Then there is Paul Gosar, the congressman from Arizona, and Tom Massey, the congressman from Kentucky, who went as far as asking for the speaker's resignation.
We want him to resign and to announce his resignation so that we don't go speakerless for a period of time.
Speaker Mike Johnson defended his policy choices despite having the majority of the Republican conference vote against his Ukraine bill.
We gave our members a voice. We gave them a chance. We gave them a better process and ultimately a much better policy.
On Tuesday, the Senate will begin debating the $95 billion supplemental foreign aid package for Israel, Ukraine, and Taiwan, which also includes a ban on TikTok. And President Biden has already announced that he's willing to sign such a bill. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.